Lab. We have a fun discussion and game in store for you this evening. Welcome. Hello, Quick Draw.
Hey, how are you doing tonight?
Doing great. And first time on the stream, my very own dear baby brother. Welcome, ST Russell.
Thank you. Thank you. Finally, I get to make an appearance. It is great to join you both tonight.
hmm
So,
Or should we say the person claiming to be ST Russell for purposes of debunking some myths that we're the same person?
Yeah, JT paid me $30 to come on the stream and say I was ST Russell. I actually have no idea who that guy is.
your name's
Keyforge.
Billy, right?
Indeed. Well, cool. Well, we're kind of got some fun things teed up. I know we wanted to talk about some lessons learned from other games. Maybe first we'll rattle off a few announcements before we kind of jump in. Did you want to run through any quick draw here, or happy to do it too?
Yeah, so ABR starting this week, and you and I, JT, got the luck of the draw week one, playing against each other. Very first week, there's 132 players in ABR this year, and week one, you and I are playing against each other. So that'll be fun. It is the 56 to 58 slot of the SAS ladder, and I think we're going to try to play this tomorrow night on this channel, right? We don't know what
Mm-hmm.
time yet, but 8, 9, 10 Eastern, I don't know, something like that.
Thereabouts. We can make it known ahead of time, and I think well. I don't want you to confirm or deny, but I had a good chuckle when I saw your name at the 56 to 58 slot. And I was like, I know exactly what deck Quick Draw is likely to play in this range. And he looked at the same thing, and I'm
Like,
sure said, I know exactly what deck he's going to play.
we both figured it out pretty quickly. Honestly, though, I would rather just get it out of the way week one. I feel like we could have probably figured it out no matter what week we were playing, whatever the format was. We probably could have figured it out. So now we don't have to worry about hiding anything from each other the rest of the season because we're not going to play each other again. So,
Yeah. Hey,
so
folks in the
that'll
chat,
be positive.
welcome. Yeah, we have kind of a wide open team channel for ABR things, and it's funny when we're on different lineups. Like last season when ST Russell was on a different team, we had like the shop talk going on, and he was like, "Wait, what?"
I am the
Yeah.
odd man out this season.
hmm
Um, it's you two and Not Tonight and Crusader. And did you get, is Keveld playing too, or is it?
Yeah, Kveld too.
It's insane. Like literally everyone from the Sloppy
Ooh.
Lab except for me.
You know,
So
Now,
most
now you get the
seasons,
privilege of all the insider information, though, Quick Draw.
all that stuff that I'm gonna really like abuse, of course.
yeah, it's funny because the last few seasons, like a lot of the APR folks, maybe not all of them. I wasn't sure followed like time shapers, sanctimonious too much. So I got a lot of like sanctimonious time shapers folks, kind of first time around without too much competition. And now I got all the Polish players without too much competition. So we'll see.
Secret's gonna be out after
Se-
this season.
Secret
Yeah,
The
sauce.
Polish
definitely.
player is gonna be taken.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
indeed.
Welcome everybody. So one star peeps. No, I don't think we're gonna be leaking any info to our teammates. I think like we were pretty fortunate that JT and I were playing each other, and I don't have to have that like conundrum of telling all of my teammates what he's gonna play against them. I already know I'm gonna play against him, so it's makes it a little bit easier for us, I think.
hmm
Um, JT, you made a fantasy league, didn't you?
Yeah. I think this is gonna be fun. So we made a fantasy. We have kind of this form on the ABR server. Folks can fill out, draft 7 players to their team. We assigned each person in the league a cost, kind of relative to the number of wins that they picked up last season. Gave new players a fixed cost, and just said, yeah, make yourself a team. Should be a lot of fun. We'll assign points as we go throughout the season and see who comes out on top. Probably we'll try to put together some sort of prize. It's going to be a lot of fun. You don't have to be playing in the league to participate in the fantasy league. So, yeah, throw something together. And actually, I'm curious what you both think because one of the things I did not mention when I put the form out there was that I was anticipating making the fantasy lineups public just so folks could follow along, you know? And I don't know, was that something I should have said out front or I think it was kind of implicit? I feel like it was kind of implicit, but now I'm like, I don't know, people are going to feel weird because I have.
So, I, I mean, that's just me. I would think it'd be public too. Like I do this in a different game, very similar concept, and you just like post your team publicly, so it's like public from the start. But
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe take a straw poll over there, see what they say.
Yeah, I think a straw poll is always a good call, but like as Quickrar was saying, in most like fantasy leagues, it's all like face up information, so you can see how people are doing or how your picks are doing throughout the season. But
Yeah, I'm really
you can
hoping
also
that it gives folks like a reason to root for somebody who maybe not on their team in some matches too. So
yeah,
have
definitely.
that dynamic go down. So it should be fun.
Yeah, it should be fun. It's a cool setup. I'm curious to see how some of the selections go down because I felt it was
Mm.
really hard to pick anyone that was above 4 points.
It was, and I mean, for the captains as well. Most seasons it's so tough to pick players who are above 4 points. You get through one round of picks, and well, I guess that's not true. There are a lot of really good players, a lot of really good
Yeah,
players in the league, and even players with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way through top to bottom. It's just very high quality pool. Um, is fantasy ever not public? I don't know. And Murph, I'll drop a link in the chat here to the forum, or one of my co-hosts here will do it. But yeah, there's just a Google form you'd fill out, selecting 7 folks, and we definitely stole the idea from the NKFL fantasy. They did it a little differently. They costed players by voting, so you'd vote on who you thought would win each bracket. We made it a little bit, I don't know, our own ABR spin, I guess. So taking past season results, I think going forward may instead use, all-time results in the league. We'll see, instead of just past season. So there was some kind
yeah,
of wacky numbers in there. But this is sort of the experiment run. A lot of folks submitting lineups already. We're already in like pushing 30 fantasy lineups, which is pretty cool. And
yep. I got mine in this morning.
yeah,
Well, I
the
still have
biggest
to do mine.
the biggest thing that folks are struggling with is limiting themselves to the 21 points. I've seen a lot of like
Mm.
23 and 27 point lineups. So if you think you maybe
Uh,
submitted a lineup that's more than 21 points, feel free to submit again. I'll just use the most recent one as your submission, keeping it sloppy. Like,
one soul.
Yeah.
yeah,
I don't know which one, and I don't know if I took both of you, but I took at least one.
Okay.
right on, right on.
Okay, so the last announcement we wanted to talk about was Kagi 6.0 signups end tomorrow night at midnight Eastern time. So the adaptive league in the Sanctimonious Discord going for version 6.0. Again, the running joke I think was that no one knows what the point .0 is for. Why is it 6? What happened to 5.5, 5.1? I don't know. But it's an awesome league. It's all adaptive, just like super basic. Keyforge is Garfield and amazing league. Murph is running it in the chat right now. Fudgenator. Thanks for picking that up again. And it's gonna be a lot of fun. So definitely sign up in the Sanctimonious Discord for that before tomorrow night.
And a reminder for my brother, but also for myself too. We're within 24 hours of having to have your NKFL lineups and verifications submitted, and I still have to do it. so
I've
let's go,
actually
Kagi,
submitted
and
3
also
so
don't
far.
forget. hmm
Yeah.
hmm
I've submitted 3 so far. I've been reworking that lineup, really trying to really going for it this season.
Actually,
Yeah,
we should just mention this. Next week we're planning on doing a Hexad episode, right?
we
Yep.
are.
ST, you're going to join us next week as well with JDG. And so we'll be talking about the NKFL Nordic Hexad next week. Really cool format,
Hmm.
tons of strategy. I'm really eager. Like I wish I could play in the league. It's one of the ones I just don't know if I could commit to like such huge blocks of time you need to play them, and with the time
Yeah.
zone difference, it's just not really like something I can swing right now. So, but it's a really cool format. I'm really eager to hear more about it from you guys who've been playing it for a few seasons now.
Yeah, I hope that you'll at some point you'll give it a go. But it's a very, very interesting format. I think that the more that I play in it, the more that I fall in love with it, to be honest. Like the more levels of the gameplay that you can really explore with not just the banning, but how deck choices, etc. So I've really been like falling in love with that format. So my hats off to all those NKFL folks.
So, can't wait for that next week.
hmm
All right.
hmm
Shall we get into the meat of the episode today?
Yes, indeed.
Let's do
All
it.
right. All right. So we wanted to talk about some lessons learned. I guess first we want to also introduce ST Russell to the show, and like we were talking to him yesterday about what got you started in KeyForge and what kind of things you're into, and it kind of led into us trying to think about like other games we've played and what we've taken from that. So before we get into like our lessons that we each have a couple that we're going to share. ST Russell, why don't you talk about how you got into KeyForge, what kind of stuff you're into, if you have a pet deck you like to share, anything like that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you for giving the floor. But for me, my journey through Keyforge really started with JT. Justin has been always the pioneer in our family with card games and collectibles. He introduced me to Magic when I was a kid, and he would drag me to all the events. So we would go to drafts, we would go to a Classic Constructed together, whatnot. I mostly brought the jank, but it was just fun to dabble and explore that hobby. And then years later, be able to come back to it and play Keyforge with him. At this time, when I was a little bit older, I can actually explore some strategy with them, maybe even contribute my little bit some thoughts and ideas myself. And it's been probably for me one of the most fun TCGs that I've played, and I've played a few so far, but I keep coming back to Keyforge. And even I took a little bit of a break during the hiatus. Started playing some other games, but now that Keyforge is ramping up, I'm really coming back full swing into this game. And I think for me, one of the things that I found most rewarding about this was the community and the people surrounding the game that I could go play with. Especially here, my local scene in New York has been incredible. A lot of those players are they really love the game as well, and so we should just come out to see the same faces every week and being able to grow with them and develop new strategies with them has been a very rewarding process for me. So the community is probably like one of the most important parts of this game that I really appreciate.
100% on that. The community here is
Yeah.
amazing, and everyone that I've met online, all my locals that I play with, like everyone is just super nice to chat with and fun to
Hmm.
play games with. Definitely an amazing community, as I think everyone's already seen over the hiatus. You need a really great community to survive what KeyForge has, what's happened to it in the last couple of years, and
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely, and a great community to bring it back, and and everything that we've seen so far, the community is strong, and I think this game's going to come back in full swing. So it's exciting. It's a very exciting time to be in Keyforge for sure.
I love hearing your story though about, you and your big brother. My brother and I also played CCGs when we were kids, and we had a kind of a similar relationship. So it's really cool to like be able to share that with brothers. I know what that's like, so very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, I mean, I think that's probably the most rewarding part. One of the most rewarding parts about this is being able to go to tournaments. Being Justin and I would travel to, or JT and I would travel to Vault Tours together. We'd get a hotel, we'd get together, we have the weekend together, we'd go out for dinner, we'd play some cards, and we'd just be able to have that weekend for us, and it was, yeah, it's some of the greatest memories that I've made through this game.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some really good times for sure. So I'm definitely looking forward to kind of like the OP engine kicking back up. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't think the Keyforge. I don't know. Are you planning on going to the Keyforge celebration, ST?
I wouldn't be able to swing it. I have a wedding that weekend. Otherwise, was really considering it if I could have,
Mm-hmm.
but I won't be able to make it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would
Yeah.
have been a lot of fun. I won't be there either. I know JT, you were talking about it. Are you still on the fence about it?
It would have been really nice to be able to do. I think it's a little short notice for me to get the logistics together. Um, but I
Yeah.
don't know. I'm still holding out a little hope. We'll see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even if we can't make it, everybody, like there's still going to be some cool people there, even though three of us won't be. I've seen some of the names people go, and I'd be really excited to go and meet some of these people that we've been playing with and hanging out with online for the last few years. So, it looks like a ton of fun. Very jealous of everyone going.
Very
Super
jealous.
jealous.
I'm looking forward to seeing some like recordings or streaming of these new formats that are coming out as well. So excited to see them live and in play.
See what some Unchained is like.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And kind of,
All right. So, yeah.
well, I was just gonna say, not to pivot too dramatically, but ST and I played a lot of games together over the years to varying extent. We dabbled in the Pokemon. I mean, like even Yu-Gi-Oh. Uh, I
Yeah.
mean, lots of games.
Briefly.
Very
Yeah.
briefly, yeah. um, gosh, there. I
I
don't know.
played
Even say
Pokemon very briefly,
Mm.
probably
Yeah.
early 2000s, I think.
we
Maybe a little before that.
very recently, within the last year or two, sold the remains of our Pokemon collection for sealed Keyforge product, and our sister was like, "The f you do." But
Make a small fortune on those Pokemon cards, huh?
yeah, the like
Yeah. Oh
OG
yeah.
Charizards and stuff. The store owner was like, you know what these are worth, right? Like, yeah,
Was it a first edition?
not first
uh,
edition.
Not
No,
first,
no,
yeah.
not first edition. But
Man,
surely some
yeah.
lessons learned from those other games picked up along the way.
That's a
Mm,
yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. I
mm,
think we might have some things to say about that. It's
definitely.
so we each I think came from like similar backgrounds in that we've played other CCGs, TCGs in the past, competitively or even casually, or a mixture of both. And so we were putting together, our ideas here, and it's kind of cool to see, like, ST, you talked about some lessons you've learned from Fab. JT, you have some MTG and chess in there, which I've played a little bit of both of those. I have Star Wars CCG in here for mine, so like it's gonna be pretty cool to see like different perspectives and like see what you can glean from different games and still bring it into Keyforge. Some of it is not really like mechanic related, but more of like just a gaming thing in general. So, um, JT, why don't you start us off with a couple of years, 1 years or 2 years, however
Yeah,
many you like.
maybe I'll start off with one. We can kind of go around. Yeah, I got a couple. It was hard to kind of pick just two here. Um, but I think one that I wanted to include um, from MTG. We've talked about the virtues of luck in a game like Keyforge before on
Mm,
this podcast and the stream. And I also think it's important to say that, like, while it's a very positive thing, and it is a very positive thing for the game, it's also important to try and look beyond its impact or potential impact when you're hoping to improve, right? So something that I learned in MTG, playing lots of MTG and competitively for a long time, it's very easy to get up from a game and say, like, well, I just drew poorly, um, or I got mana screwed, or what have you, right? Like the like RNG kind of kicked me in the teeth, and there was nothing I could do. And I'm not going to say that like that's wrong. Like there are times when it's 100% correct, and there are also times where it plays a significant, where luck or kind of luck of the draw plays a significant hand in the outcome of the match. But I think there's often something to glean beyond kind of that, and it's can be constructive to kind of like try and tease apart what else you could have done. Like, okay, maybe you did actually get mana screwed, but was there something you could have done differently in your play? Like having recognized, like, okay, I'm resource constrained. Like, can I adjust my plan to deal with these new constraints? Or very often what you'll see in Keyforge, right, is it'll get down to the very last turn, and it's like, well, if I draw this, then I'm going to win. If I don't draw it, then I lose. And now it feels like this game is being decided by a coin flip, right? Which can feel bad when it doesn't come up in your favor. But there are very often lots of things that led up to that being the deciding point in the match that were within your control, right? Even going back to the deck that you selected or the band that you made in the triad or what have you, right? Um, so I guess the point I'm trying to make is like, yeah, luck is a factor. It's a really good thing for the game. I'm really glad it's part of the game. And I think that in your road to kind of improving as a competitor within the game of Keyforge, or really any game with a luck component, is to always be asking yourself, like, okay, but luck aside, like what could I be doing differently? Where were there opportunities to change my play? So yeah, that was my first one, and I think that this is a message that gets hammered in an awful lot in sort of the competitive MTG literature, but it's not something you hear an awful lot in the kind of Keyforge world.
That's a really good one.
yeah.
And I think it's good for everyone to like think about it. You were saying like you get down to the end, you have two cards left, and if you draw the card you need, you're out, then you're good. Well, maybe you should ask yourself whether turns earlier in the game when you're like, okay, I can call my house of two cards in hand or my house of three cards in hand, and maybe like the two card is, maybe it's slightly better from an Amber Generation perspective, but then you think like maybe I could have played those three just to make sure that I find the answers that I need later on. So like small decisions like that seem right in the moment could come back to kind of hurt you like that. And I think that's one of the cool things about the game is that there's always going to be something in there that like could have done differently during the game. And like you said, maybe don't blame that on luck. Maybe don't blame it on being like the bottom card of your deck. Like try to put yourself in the best position you can to see the bottom card of your deck by the time you need it. I think it's a great lesson. I think it was a really good one.
Hmm.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like, in Key Four, it's a race, it's a game of race, but forging your last key is often the most memorable. It's like, what could I have done to get them off check, or how could I forge the third key? But ultimately, the game is constructed over all these micro decisions you make throughout the early and mid game that lead to an end state that either puts you ahead of your opponent or sets you one turn behind. And trying to really digest, the accumulation, the propagation of choices you make, beginning or mid game, and how that leads to a certain end state can be really insightful, and that can either lead you to not having enough efficiency to get to the answer that you need that might be on, like, bottom third of your deck that you're trying to dig for. And so a lot of those a lot of and going back and analyzing the choices, I think, is really really important, very important, and not to blame necessarily a lot of that on luck or whatnot, but to just take all that into consideration.
Yeah,
Hmm.
back when we had the Crucible tracker, it was a lot
Hmm.
easier to find that kind of stuff. You could go back
Yeah.
and like review your entire game log and see the board at the state at the time of each turn, everything like that. It was way easier to pick that kind of stuff out. And that's not available right now. So you have to kind of pay a little bit more attention during the game itself to kind of think like, here's a pivotal moment, like maybe think about this, like what should I do here, and then come back to that later and see.
Yeah, this concept also manifests a lot in Flesh and Blood, a game that I've been playing recently. In that, cards that you use to throw attacks or like resources, you end up pitching to go on the bottom of your deck, and you'll draw them later on in the game if the game goes long enough. And so, a big part of the strategy of the game is trying to set up your long-term end game while you're pitching for, like, using the resources cards to play out attacks or threats early in the game. And so managing those resources and stacking cards appropriately is a huge part of the game, and it can be a lot of games can be won or lost depending on choices that were made in the earlier middle portion of the game. And so yeah, so I feel like, yeah, exactly, trying to really optimize those turns can be really pivotal to increasing your percentage points for outcomes during in some matchups. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, Andrew's saying that the results-oriented mindset being kind of the other side, where folks get too fixated on how that final coin flip landed, and you have to really, I mean, it's a little bit cliche, but like folks say that luck is kind of when preparation meets opportunity, and really you only have, at least in games such as this, right, and you really only have control over the preparation component, and you have to be, well, one, willing to look past the outcome and say, was I actually putting in the preparation? But also, two, kind of the difficult part is then being confident when it doesn't go your way and say, like, okay, I was actually doing the right thing, even if it didn't go my way. But
Yeah. Yeah,
interesting
and I
one.
think this is also translates a lot into life, just being more process oriented rather than, results oriented, but trying to, enjoy the game, enjoy the match, enjoy the interaction with the opponent, and trying to take something out of the process rather than just the win or loss.
Mm.
So Fudginator's talking about pitch stacking in the chat. You were talking about pitch stacking
Yeah.
a bit. I'm not familiar with that term with Fab. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So one of my favorite heroes, I'm not sure if you're familiar. I'm sure Fetchinator is, but I play Oldhim, play a lot of Oldhim, but a lot of his strategy can revolve around cards that use resources to throw attacks. So, like, let's say, for example, you have a card that costs three. You have other cards in your hand that have to have you'd pay as resources to play that attack, or to play that threat, or to play a card from hand. Those will then get pitched and they'll go on the bottom of your deck, and you get to choose the order in which the cards go at the bottom of your deck at the end of your turn. So ultimately, as you go through the first cycle of your deck, you'll hit a point where cards that you've pitched or placed at the bottom of your deck in particular order will start to resurface. And that hits the second cycle, where then you can start to hope to get to a strategy that you've hoped, stacked cards in a certain sequence in order to have a more desired or even multiplicative effect later on in the game. And so you can use your pitching as a way to set a long-term strategy, whether it is you're either trying to, block out a certain turn or trying to hold off to get to your second cycle, or you're trying to set up like a early aggressive game plan with a more disruptive and controlling second cycle. Which
So
so
this is like you're deferring value from now and to later in the game. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And you can and often that's sometimes the best choice is just to save it for later. And that can be really difficult. You have like a certain sequence of cards in your hand. You're like, wow, I can get a whole lot of value now. But a lot of times it's like, you know what? I could just save it for later, conserve my life total, and then eventually those cards will come back around and I'll have myself hopefully in a better position where I can capitalize on that increase in efficiency and tempo or increase in tempo. Yeah.
Mm. Conserve my life
Yeah.
total. How often do you get that juicy term on a Keyforge discussion, right?
My Amber total.
There's so much
But
engagement in the chat with the flesh and blood
I
discussion,
know we
and
mentioned Fab and the chat lights up. Like, what's going on here? But but super analogous to like crafting to selective purging from your discard pile for the second pass through your deck in Keyforge, right?
Yeah.
Like that's
Hmm.
that's definitely a thing. Like, how often do you just snap say, oh yeah, I'm going to Infernus their discard pile instead of my own, when maybe if you know you're going to take 3-4 passes through your deck, that you're just going to rather you'd be better off with the dividends from crafting your own. Um, yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely. And a lot of times in Keyforge, you'll let in a lot of some of our like favorite decks, you'll want to see cards in a certain sequence, or you want to have play cards out in a certain fashion, and a lot of times it doesn't line up the way you necessarily plan. So it can be just trying to really prolong the game so that you can draw back into a hopefully thinner deck where you are getting back into answers that you want to have for the third key to try to close the game out. And so I
yeah.
think there's definitely a lot of synergy there.
I also was thinking about archiving options, especially
Hmm.
early in the game.
Hmm.
If you maybe have like a TMTP or a graft or something like that, and you could play it immediately for a little bit of value and maybe take like two or three from them, or you could archive it for later. Sometimes that could be like a really pivotal decision for the end of the game if you know like they're about to burst up or you need it to take them off check or something like that. I could see that kind of weighing into the short term versus long term planning as well.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And also, the Keyforge has lots of creatures like Sanitation Engineer, things that make you have discard effects where, you might not want to pitch the card from off house in your hand, but ultimately that can get you another card through your deck. So finding small ways to increase your efficiency to help get you to answers that are deeper in your deck it can be hard, but sometimes even the most optimal choices.
I like what you said earlier too, in response to JT's first one about micro decisions, because I really feel like in Keyforge there are a lot more than you realize. And I
Hmm.
think a lot of people, when they're just starting to learn this game, they may not pick up on it, and they might just think like, "Oh, well, this game's there's a lot of luck involved here." They don't realize how many little micro decisions they've made throughout the game that have added up to
Hmm.
something like really big by the end.
Yeah, definitely. And often I find that it's really centralized around your battle line or being able to set up taunting or set up your battle line in such a way where certain creatures that you need to protect are protected and that or their threats that you want to put on the board can have protection that can give you like lots of value throughout. Like for example, putting a Fandango behind an Ardent Hero or something of that nature just lets you having more control, more thoughtful placement in your battle line can really give you a lot of value rather than just placing out creatures on the flanks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like that got way more complex too in Dark Tidings. 'Cause there's a lot more
Yeah.
battle line effects in that set.
Hmm. Hmm. Definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, so I got a couple here. I'm going to start with one that is like my like the number one thing that I think I've learned from Star Wars CCG, but it really is, true of any game, I think, or most games. And that is to always assume that your opponent is better than you. Um,
Mm.
I used to play Star Wars CCG in a way that was like try to lure them into a trap and then just like beat them down and have a huge victory, like, just by kind of capitalizing on a mistake. And then the more I played against better players, the more I realized they're not falling for that trap. And when you try to lay that trap, you're kind of setting yourself back a little bit. And you are leaving yourself susceptible, which good players can always capitalize on. So to me, it's really about assuming no matter who you're playing that they are better than you, they're not going to fall for your trap, and to just try to make the value play that gives you the best expected value over the long term. Play your cards well and like know your deck, but don't go out of your way to try to make them fall for something. And this is also, I think, pretty prevalent in chess too. Like there's some very reckless plays you can make in chess that a good player will just pick apart without even thinking about it. And so it's tempting to go that route sometimes to try to like make a quicker game or like, do something pretty cute. But I found that it's best to just always assume they're not going to fall for it.
Yeah. Two kind of like immediate reactions. The first is that I'm lucky enough not to have to make that assumption. It's just usually true. you know? And yeah, I absolutely thought of chess when you said this because, well, and Keyforge as well, but I will tie back to that in a second. But like, you very often see players in chess plateau at different rating levels because at some point, like, I mean, these tactics, like the tactics you were relying on to kind of win, they work up to a certain point, and then after that point, it's like no, you just kind of like get stomped because you're trying to like pull these cheap tricks. Um, so it's really interesting to see like um, what like elo ranges folks plateau at, because there are almost like you could almost be like, okay, this is the range where like this tactic works, and then above that it doesn't work, and folks kind of like have trouble breaking through that range. Um, but I do see this in Keyforge as well too, or maybe feel myself doing it when you're like, okay, I'm setting up the thing, and you're like, and they're like, oh, miasma go, and you're like, well, obviously now you have the TMTP, you know,
Yeah.
it's like, but the one kind of I don't know, caveat is kind of maybe also like play to your outs, and if your only out is that they fall for a thing, I don't know, is there a
Absolutely.
trade off
Yeah.
there? Yeah,
That's a
Yeah.
really good point too. Is like sometimes maybe that trap is your only out, and then sure,
Mm.
then you got to do it sometimes. But when the game is still kind of in the balance, and it could go either way, and you don't have to take that risk. I found that it's just best not to. Just make your best play without leaving yourself open for a big counterattack.
yeah,
Mm.
100%, 100%. I think we had similar conversation synctimos at one point, but my feeling on this is like, yeah, never assume your opponent's going to make a mistake. Sometimes you have to give them the opportunity, but yeah, I don't know. You wouldn't want to assume. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah,
All right,
definitely.
JT, you have another one here from chess since we're talking about chess.
Ooh, I do. This one's pretty meaty, so maybe we'll just kind of like breeze through it, and then I feel like this maybe with one or two others could be enough fodder for a whole conversation down the road. But it's this idea of having the initiative, and it's kind of mixed up with tempo and some other kind of concepts there. Um, and I'm gonna just kind of rattle off the definition as I stole it from somewhere on the internet. But we say that in chess, in a position, the initiative belongs to the player who can make threats that cannot be ignored, and this puts your opponent in a position of having to spend their turns kind of responding uh, to threats rather than creating threats of their own, right? And so, kind of related to tempo, in that,
Hmm.
in that way, you're maybe trying to prevent their development while furthering your own. But there are definitely decks, and the one that I pulled up here as an example, uh, good friend and teammate, not tonight, is famous for playing this deck to great success, right? So Rector, uh, be hated, feared on the far and wide. But one of
Here
the
for
reasons
sure.
why I love this deck is because of its threat density, and it's always got the initiative, right? Like it's uh, always playing something that you have to respond to, and folks are often like, it's like, how did I lose? Well, you spent the whole game like trying to deal with a Dusk Witch or a Taliga, or just like making sure you had enough board presence to not get blown out by Gang or not, right? So there's like just so many threats, and you're kind of always on the back foot. Um, um, and it's hard to kind of establish your own game plan unless it happens to be one that allows you to deal with these threats too. But that was kind of the idea. I don't know if there's as much of a takeaway, as much of a thing to be considering as you're evaluating decks and thinking about your plays. If I'm maybe looking at a deck that's lower SAS or lower powered, is there a way that I can be digging through my collection to like I don't know, taking advantage of this idea of initiative to punch higher than I normally would, for example. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's sometimes like you mentioned the Dusk Witch is you always have to take care of the Dusk Witch. Eh, Always be checking is one thing I always say, ABC.
Hmm.
And if you get to six and you have two keys already, you're making them respond to you. So when you're at the end of the game, obviously like later in the game, the initiative may not be as key of a concept, but the point is that you're making them respond to you. And so anytime you have a chance to put a threat up like that, whether it's forging a key or like sticking a dusk witch, then I think that can definitely influence them. And if you're like sitting in a position where you're thinking, if I can make this move here, I'm gonna make their next turn weaker because they're gonna have to just respond to me and take care of it.
Hmm. There was one game where we played. I think it was actually during the 24-hour stream, which was super fun, um, uh, where we put, or probably I put, I should take the blame, own my blunders, but I put a dust switch in the archives because I was like, well, it's not going to survive. Like, this is not the time to like run out a dust switch onto the board. Um, and Not Tonight was like, no, this is the perfect time because we need to like win back some tempo. We need to take the initiative. We need to like put this out there, make them take a beat to deal with it. Because otherwise, they're just going to continue with their plan in their head, sort of a thing. So looking at some of these cards not as like just their face value, but as a way to kind of steal back some of the momentum in the match. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think that, for decks that have a lot of like high threat density, if you can maintain, initiative throughout the entire game, and that's great. But for a lot of decks, I find that often I'm trying to craft the most like a turn that happens throughout the game where I can really steal the tempo. I'm really trying to craft this initiative or taking the initiative throughout the game, whether it's waiting out certain threats before I deploy the dust switch or whatnot. So trying to find the optimum moment to take the initiative, I think also is really for me at least is something I consider when I'm playing a Keyforge game. And I think that has a lot of synergy also with Flesh and Blood. It's like surrounding a concept of like a pivot turn, or a turn where you can really steal tempo and you can or you can take initiative from the other player and then really be now the aggressor in the matchup and then trying to close out the game. And it's trying to build up, trying to save resources, or trying to craft a certain hand that lets you then play out your line most optimally, which then puts you in the best position to close out the game.
You've
So I
done a
don't
really
know.
good job of taking JTs and then like kind of transitioning perfectly into your points about these other lessons that you have, which is great because you did it with the short term and long term planning the first time around, and then now with the pivot turn. So like,
Yeah,
talk about the
yeah.
pivot turn more. So not just in Fab, but like in Keyforge, like what are you looking for in a Keyforge turn when you're like, okay, this maybe isn't the right time for me to take that tempo. Like I'm going to wait a turn and kind of set myself up a little bit more.
Yeah, I think with one of my favorite decks, it has like I would say a lot of its strategies craft around a particular card. Let's say Strange Gizmo, and there's often there's enough efficiency throughout the deck where you can get the Strange Gizmo and you can get it and you can get in your archive, or you can have it in a point where you can play it, but you're just trying to find the best time to play it and trying to play it, wipe the board, clear the slate, and then let you deploy amount of threat like a certain level of threats to a clean board can be a huge momentum swing in the game. And for me, often it's finding the right moment, whether it's doing that on key one or key two or whatnot, really helps. Really then can center around through my strategy. So sometimes it's important to do on key one, then I can follow up with exhuming, let's say Lord of Vidius into the center, and then I can really put my opponent in a predicament where if you play any creatures, then from now on I'm just stealing them and putting them onto my battle line or or doing it for key two and trying to really then stifle my opponent so that I can really set myself up to forge the last key. I think Shepherdly, Green High War, and here what's on screen here is also an example of has like two competing strategies. There's this Doctor Varoctor combo which you can try to archive using the eddies and try to set up for this groundbreaking discovery to happen at some point in the game, which then can really unforge his opponent's key. You can also, if you use the upgrades appropriately, you can even perhaps even stick a Proctor with a pretty beefy Proctor that can be used in any house that's warded on that's warded and it cannot really fight through. Yeah, there's 5 different upgrades, and that's not even to mention the creatures that can be played like as upgrades, like Teresa and Shield You Later. So often you can get Dr. Proctor with 10 different upgrades on it, or 8 to 10 different upgrades, and at the end of the game, he can be used in any house. You can play any card from your discard on tap through using the Reckless Experiment, and then with the cards like with using cards like Ambervac, you can then just store lots of amber on him as well. So you can build up all this momentum to create a creature that is almost unstoppable. This Voltron-like creature, and so it's yeah, I think through cards like that, yeah, it can really, or through turns like that, you can really set yourself up for a nice pivot in the game where your opponent might have been ahead, but now you've unforged their key and you have a creature that can almost not be answered.
The Gizmo was a great example, I think, because
Yeah.
I don't actually have too many decks with Gizmo, and so
Mm.
if I did, I'd probably just be tempted to throw it out there like as soon as I get it anyway. But it sounds like you're saying maybe after your first key is not the right time to use it, right?
Definitely, especially in the down in Seamstress, the deck I'm discussing, it's the major form of board control. So often, a lot of the tension that's felt with the opponent is when is the gizmo going to pop? Is it going to happen in the middle of the game, or is it going to happen early in the game? And if I can really hold out to key two, then in the exhumes or whatnot, you can really then build up a huge, almost unstoppable battle line in key three, where your opponent is faced with a lot of disruption through the Lord Invidious's. But yeah, it's a very, I would say, skill testing card, and sometimes I've even lost by playing it early and then needing that board control later in the game and not being able to have it on access to it. And so I find that the Strange Gizmo is a good example of a card that really can set up these pivot turns if used appropriately.
Yeah,
A nice one. I
we
like it.
played some really interesting matches between these two decks, ST, Seamstress,
Yeah.
and Lighthouse. And this deck, Lighthouse, is probably the deck that I have that's closest to an actual control deck, right? It's trying to set up a stranglehold with some of its artifacts. You've got this got the Eaton's jar, you've got the animator, you've got the transporter platform. So between animator and transporter platform, and even with the Kirby's, you're playing Graviton twice in a turn. All these archiving, capturing onto the animated artifact. It's kind of silly end game state, but it takes some setup to get there. And this whole matchup basically revolved around a fight over over the strange gizmo, right? So it was very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say, game one, yeah, I was able to get to on key two and be able to clear the artifacts and really, and disrupt your long-term game plan. But I think in the second game, you steamrolled me because it popped in, I think popped after the first key. I just didn't have the artifact control later in the game when I needed it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very cool. So, should we swing back around? Quick draw, do you have another one for us?
I have one more, and this one is it's interesting because I thought of this one after hearing some of your stories, about how you guys played when you were kids, played other games. And I remembered back to when my brother and I were playing Star Wars CCG. We had a very limited budget, very limited collection, and we actually shared a collection. And that means that we kind of had like half the cards, really. Like we might collect, like we have a Darth Vader, we have a Luke Skywalker, but only one of us can use them. And so we had a system where we would rotate every tournament. One of us would get to just choose their decks, all their cards, whatever they wanted, and the other person would kind of get the leftovers. We felt that was like a better system for maximizing at least one of our chances of doing well in it. And a funny thing happened when we did that is that the whichever one of us it was, it happened almost every single time. Whichever one of us had the leftovers ended up doing better in the tournament. And the lesson to me there was really, it's not about having like the most expensive cards or decks. It's not about, having the fancy thing that everyone's got their eyes on. But if you can just be resourceful and practice and know your cards, know your decks, learn from your mistakes, like you really don't need to have something like Seamstress to be able to win competitive games. Like I
Hmm.
played Keyforge for a long time, like not having anything above an 80 and just trying to find good values on the secondary market, play what I had to the best of my ability. And I certainly struggled like to win more. It just took a lot of work, I think. But I just want to say this too, because like I know a lot of people are thinking like, man, I don't have any decks like Seamstress out here. But I'm telling you, like there are definitely decks I think that are under the radar, maybe even in your own collection, or maybe that are available for sale from someone for like 10 or 15 bucks that can really do some damage if you like kind of practice with them and know them well. And um, you know, just that the lesson for me was that you can find good value in synergy that's underrated, if you just kind of know where to look for it. And sometimes being limited in what you have available can help you find things that you wouldn't have otherwise thought to look for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's like to that point is why Keyforge is such a beautiful game. And compared to any other game that I've played, just having a pre-constructed deck that you can't manipulate really forces you to have to try to understand the tools that are available to you at a deep level, which you then can try to draw connections between cards that people have never seen before, or try to interact in a certain way, or using the tools that you have at your to take down someone else's monster of a deck. So it's I think that I think that in itself is such a great thought exercise that Keyforge can provide, and you can't really get that with any other game. For example, if we were to go into Flesh and Blood, you just have a card that you don't want to use, you have a bad penny in your deck. It's like, well, I'll just take this out and put Rad Penny in, or upgraded version in. But trying to figure out how I can most optimally use that bad penny, then I think then it opens your mind to all these different interactions that are possible, where it's where you might be overlooked when you're just trying to think about what are the best cards you could put in. So yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
we talked about that I think last week when we were talking about Alliance, how like just the design of Keyforge in general requires you to play with these bad cards and either
Mhm.
to get the most out of them as you can, or to be able to play around it, like play around that weakness, that hole that you might have in your deck, because no deck is perfect. So, um, yeah, that was I think it's a really unique thing about Keyforge. I
Yeah.
was always, the games. I was always like I think Rogue Ryan might be like the right term. I tried to play things that were like people wouldn't always expect, and you would maybe like they would see a situation and they wouldn't really know how to react to it as well. Um, and that I think came from my having to be a little bit more resourceful in what I had available to me and trying different things. And I still do that to this day, like when playing Star Wars CCG. And so it's kind of fun that way to like
Mhm.
see the look on someone else's face when they're like, "Oh man, I never even saw this card before, and now you're gonna like beat me with it." It's like it's a great feeling.
Yeah.
It's harder in Keyforge because, like you said, like you're kind of just dealt the cards that are in your deck, and like you don't really have as many of those strategies that you can craft together that people hadn't seen before. But every deck's unique, and every deck can do something that something else can't. So it's there's definitely some opportunities for that if you know where to look and um, just find the right combination of something that kind of calls to you.
Yeah, definitely. And I find that, a lot of cards in Keyforge, they might be situational. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad. Often, a lot of these cards that perhaps we didn't get any use of them when in Coda, like Life Web or Take That Smarty Pants. But now they're pretty good. They could really come back in fashion, especially when you have more board-based strategy. Logos is so prominent in the meta. You can really now capitalize on these cards that we once thought would have just been bad cards. So I
Yeah.
think, yeah, a lot of, yeah.
Doc had a really good point here. It's like getting the most out of your cards makes him think of a Coda combo that he just heard about recently. I'd never heard of this combo specifically, but playing a Snudge with a Brainstem Antenna and a Mars creature means you rule of six that Mars creature. Um, and if you get some good play things like that's a cool combo. Like I'd never thought of that one specific before, but that's like a great example of something that like maybe one or two decks out there can do pretty well. And until you run into it, you're never even going to think of it.
All right,
Yeah,
Zoc. When
definitely.
the alliance meta is all Snudge Brainstem Antenna, I'm coming for you. Yeah, but yeah, absolutely. I love the kind of I love that Keyforge showcases the resourcefulness of players and how that being
Mhm.
how a lot of the skill shines through, and in different kind of on a completely different tack. Just speaking of different games, I got into MTG as a very very green, uh, blissfully naive gamer, right? And back in the day when there was like no internet net decking going on because there was no internet, like you played the cards you had and you like threw whatever you had into your deck and you're like, I'm gonna make this work, and you ran it out there and you're like, why is this like one plague rat in your deck? You like, well, it's because I needed to get to like 40 or 60 and this is what I had, so like I'm gonna make it work. And like there was something like like really awesome about that feeling, and I feel like I don't know, as like an old time MTGer, like that was a that was kind of like really nostalgic kickback, and one of the things that like really grabbed me about Keyforge. Um, it's like no, you just have to like make it work. Like show me you're
Mhm.
resourceful, like and let your skill shine through. Yeah.
Sounds like none of us are going to be clamoring for Alliance anytime soon.
I'll dabble, but I think that I'm old fashioned for Keyforge in its natural state. But I'll take a look at it and see how it goes. I think that after hearing a lot of what GG talk about these formats, there are some aspects that I think are that I think will help bring newer players into the game, which I will find will be really I think great about these new alliance formats. Especially through my through a walk with playing some other games, I've mentioned Keyforge to a lot of these other players, and some have picked the game up but put it down for similar reasons that Gigi brought up. You can't. They felt like they're constrained because they can't build their own deck, or they just got a deck that wasn't great. So being able to mix and match, I think might appeal to those players and help bring them into this game, and then they can start to learn and appreciate constructed a unique deck themselves.
Yeah.
We're we are teetering on the edge of a topic that could span a few hours.
We like to say
Yeah.
this. We have like a list of topics that we're like, yeah, we could probably talk about this for an entire episode. And we have like a list growing of those kind of topics. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll put it in that box over there for
Yeah,
later.
Mm-hmm.
fair enough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm starting to think about a hand and brain. I don't know about you
Sure,
guys.
let's do it.
Right on. So we are going to play a match between some of the decks that we've actually talked about as examples this evening, or morning, or middle of the night, or wherever you diehard fans are listening time zone wise, right? Um, so Quick Draw and I are going to team up against ST and try and beat down the new guy to the stream. So let's see how this goes. We are bringing some fire. So 288s, we kind of were like, hey, maybe we'll do a random access archive game. And I think ST, you were like, oh, let's do it at 88. We're like, okay, so we're all just kind of like, you mean you just want to play as one deck?
So we're
So,
gonna play against Seamstress. And we had decided beforehand that I will be the brain this evening, which means that JT is gonna play one of my decks, and he's gonna be playing GK Macro Bell of the what is it? I don't even remember the full name of my own deck. Just call it Macro Bell.
Macrobell.
Another 88 SAS Mass Mutation. Um, so I think we also need to trust ST Russell to not glance over at JT Russell's screen here so we can see the entire hand.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'll take the edge when I can get it, right?
See, we always think the hand and brain side is a bigger disadvantage, because like
Mm,
JT's never played this deck before. Um, I'll be calling the houses for him. He's going to be playing the hands. Um, I think it's already a disadvantage on this side.
yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. All right, no cheating, I promise.
All right, that's good enough for me then.
Yeah. So
All
also
right.
have
Um,
hands open for spectators if anybody wants to watch. The password is sloppy unless I fat fingered it. Um, but I have GK Macrobell of the Inspirational Pub loaded up with enhancements ready to go.
you want to pull up the list for the viewers on this one too?
Yeah. Do you want to give us any notes before we start? That won't tell SG Russell too much about how he should
Yeah,
be mentally preparing.
yeah. I don't want to spoil too much, but it just looks like straight fire. Three Lethalogica, three Tirados, three Infernus, 10 mutants overall with a Vault's Blessing. Definitely has deck in hand potential. That's happened a few times, so um, it's pretty spicy. It'll be a really fun game against Teamsters, I think. Very interested to see how you play this one and how this goes in general.
Okay,
Yeah,
very good.
I'm shaking my boots.
I was gonna say any smack talk from your side of the match.
Uh, I don't think I should say anything I can't live up to. So let's see how it goes.
All right, I'm gonna bump up the size a little bit. Do we got any artifacts we got to worry about here? I'm so bad about covering up. All right, we got a few artifacts.
We're still seeing the deck and the stream, not the
Oof.
TCO window.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a little bit of latency going down here. No delay on the stream, just bad weather on the internets. Um, let's see.
There
Hopefully
we
it'll
go.
flip over at some point.
All right. So normally, the brain will choose the mulligan, I think. Is that what we usually do?
Yep, yep.
I want to leave the mulligan up to the hand this time because the mulligan with this deck is actually pretty interesting. So I kind of want to see your take on it and see if this is something you decide to keep or not.
Okay, okay. I can get on board with that. I will come back to finding an ideal spot for this at some point. Okay, so thinking on this one.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't hate it.
I wasn't trying to trick you necessarily. I was just,
Yeah, no, that's very fair. Very fair. I'm mostly thinking like Seamstress here is very good at playing a turn one Lord Invidious and then making you very sad for the rest of the game. And I'm trying to figure out how much I care about that as a potential outcome. I think I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna keep it. And
okay.
yeah, how do you feel about that
I
keep?
think that's. I would have done the same. You mentioning the Invidious is interesting, and also kind of changes the math on it for sure. But I think I'd still keep that. This is a pretty solid hand.
Mhm.
I'm going to start with Logos.
Starting with logos. Okay. Interesting. Um,
Right. Oof, interesting.
you know what? I'm gonna run out the Torado.
Hmm.
Yeah, agreed. That's the reason that I wanted to keep that hand was just the fact that you have a Torado.
Okay.
Um, it's really the thing that I look for with this deck.
Oof, that candle unit is gonna be trouble.
It might be. I'm going to go Logos anyway.
I like it. Okay, so I'm gonna run out the QMX. Ooh, and I am having some latency myself with TCO. Let's see how this holds up.
Ooh,
I
right.
think
If you play the standardized testing.
I don't care. They can go ahead and go back into Logos and draw with Bibliophile if they really want. And I'm gonna tuck Torado out of the flank here.
Yep,
Okay.
I like
How
it.
how was that? I mean, there was
Yeah,
maybe a case to be made for fighting into the Bibliophile, but eh.
no, I like the Reap for sure. And I also definitely was looking for the QMax first, just in case you can draw another Toronto, which
Mm-hmm.
happens. So thought that was
Yep.
good.
Hmm.
Cool. Okay, so one fight there. Not terribly unexpected. Finger Trap, also annoying. Finger Trap, super annoying. Able to put the Invidious centered or something juicy on a flank. Wow, double daughter. What a jerk.
Hmm. Um, every time he calls Logos, though, he's not planning on an Nvidia, so
Also
I
true.
feel like this isn't too bad. Let's do Untamed.
Okay. Hmm. So we got. Okay. I am going to exalt. I mean, it's between these. I think. I guess I could also kill the candle unit. I'm gonna take out a daughter. And let's take back the Torado. Yep. Could be a better Vault's
I like it.
Blessing, but I'm not going to hold it, of course.
Yeah, no, that's a good non-hold.
Yeah.
I like that turn. I think so. I was kind of between the candle unit and a daughter
Yep.
myself with the Dino Beast. I think a case could be made for either. Um, I would have probably gone for the candle unit myself just because this deck does need to reap a lot and it will reap a
Mhm.
lot. Um, but I don't think I fault you at all for going for the daughter because the daughter is like the one card right away, whereas the candle unit is potentially more cards later.
Yeah. So why did I leave the candle unit? I guess I felt like if we ended up going back into Untamed fairly quickly, Flumph or the Dino Beast could deal with the candle unit. The daughter is going to be value whichever house they go into next. If I mean, they could have gone right back into Logos. Thought there was a decent chance they wouldn't, but uh, fights the Fandangle. Unsurprising. Breaker Hill comes back down, and a Simon. Okay.
Right. No reaping.
No reaping. No reaping, you say.
That was a really good example of um, the tempo we talked about earlier. He
Mm-hmm.
had to deal with the Fandangle
Mm-hmm.
right there instead of checking. The Fandangle is such a huge threat.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
This is a real tough one now.
And we've
He
been
hasn't
inky
gone Dis
gloomed.
yet.
Yeah.
We've been Inky Gloomed. That's a big factor right there as well. Haven't seen Dis yet. Um, so this is certainly a tough spot. I think I'm gonna go with Dis here though.
Okay.
Hmm.
This it is. Okay, so we're going to make ourselves an artifact here.
Nice.
And let's leave the QMX and Turnkey on flanks. Just in case. Let's see. Kymor, have we seen Kymor already? We have not seen Kymor yet. Okay. So in case we see Kymor, let's leave those there.
Good call.
Cool.
Hmm.
Into
Yeah.
Logos. Okay.
Would you have gone Dis there, or would you have gone Logos?
So it's really interesting because I think there are certain cards which are really crucial to the deck here. I think it was a fine call. Yeah, I I probably would have been tempted into Logos, but I kind of feel like it would have been the wrong call. Like it would have been very like short term thinking to go Logos there. Um,
Mhm.
so I think this
Yeah,
was actually a really strong play. Hmm.
yeah, and it lets you draw a few more cards too, which um I really like the
Hmm.
situation you're back in now.
Yeah, I think this is a good spot. I mean, there's still a solid chance that he's crafting a gnarly dis hand. Um, E could be super annoying,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
it's
Sorry, this
interesting.
is it's a thinker right here.
Yeah, and
I think.
another thing is this seamstress deck like doesn't have a great story on creature control. Like it shows 13 on DOK, right? But you got Strange Gizmo, you got the Kymors. You don't have any wipes. It starts with Gizmo, Kymors, and then it's kind of all creature based. Okay, sure, hit and run, Inky Gloom, Plasmate Mug, but there's nothing that's like really like going to deal with runaway boards outside of Gizmo.
Mhm.
And so, he may be sitting here right now thinking whether or not he should play the Gizmo. This is his like, do I play the Gizmo face?
Hey, we just talked about it.
Now
Yeah.
this is do you have the mark of this face? And I'm staring at this candle unit, and I'm like, well, I do I really, yeah, you could really make it uncomfortable if you have the mark of this or not. That's the biggest, I think that's the biggest question in my mind is, do I play around the market disc or not? Um, you just played disc, so it'd be unlikely. Play disc. You probably have a hand of logos, is what I'm guessing. Just based off the returns you've been taking. But the market disc would be really, really sad right here. So I think we'll have to just hedge our bets. We're going to put this key on the left. We will fight this guy down, re discard, and then I'm going to put Quixo on the flank. All right.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
All right. Um, I like this. Let's go Logos.
Cool. Let's go Logos indeed.
EP, no
Hmm.
EP. Okay. Hmm.
So the real question for me is whether I tried to deal with his daughter.
Yeah, you'd have to use both your creatures to fight it, and
Mm-hmm.
then wouldn't get the reaps. Interesting choice.
Mm-hmm. And then do I want this draw from the Quixo? That's the other thing I get on balance, but I think I'm going to go to check here. None of these are mutants. Okay, so Reap, Reap. I'm going to play this very sad standardized testing. Not sadish. And then Torado, not on a flank for the moment. And that is going to be it.
I think you nailed that
Hmm.
one. I think that was a good turn. Um,
Nice.
yeah,
All
that's
right.
pretty much exactly what I would have done. Him fighting with the candle unit the turn before did mean that you were going to kill more of your own creatures with standardized,
Mm-hmm.
but also they didn't get to draw for it, so I think that's a pretty good trade-off for us.
Yeah, I think that worked out all right. And we're going to see. Let's see if the E comes down here, or maybe just an Infernus. Um, okay, there's Invidious and an E. Very nice. Mm-hmm. Unloading.
Hmm. Wait. Hmm. Toronto. I think we hit this. It's unfortunate, but
Haven't seen
hmm,
we haven't seen any
gotta do it.
Kymors yet. That was the only reason I didn't play the QMX uh, before the standardized testing. Otherwise, I probably would have been tempted to play it first. Um, but I really didn't want
Interesting
Torado to
warrior.
be open for Kymor.
Hmm. Sorry, this is a little bit of a predicament here. I'm thinking about just killing the imp. inspector here. Uh, I kind of like what I have in my hand, but I know I need to get deeper in my deck, which is unfortunate. So I think it's a necessary call. Oop. Oh, it only does one. Never mind.
All that thought.
I know. Sorry. Sorry, guys.
Oh, that's good.
This one's real tough now because the Invidious is an immediate threat here.
Mm-hmm.
He
Mm-hmm.
just drew four. How many discs does he have in his discard?
1, 2, 3 in the discard.
So that means half of his remaining cards are discs.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't love it, but I think we have to go logos here.
I like logos here. That feels good. So taking the archives.
Mm, interesting.
We've
Are
still
we going to see a
seen
Krzap?
we've still seen neither Ronnie, or we still haven't seen either Kymore or Ronnie. So I think I'm gonna end up going to 7. 7? Yeah, I think I'm gonna end up going to 7, but I don't think it's right to not go to 7. So let's hmm. If you do have Kymore, do I want the QMax out? Taking a look at my draw pile.
It's a pretty insane draw pile.
Yeah, right. I think we'll leave the QMax there. Okay, so let's reap with QMax. Let's play the Krzap.
Oh,
Purge a
you got a
Kymore.
Kymore. Nice job.
I'll
Nice,
take it.
nice play right
Yeah, that's
Oof.
value. All right, we're going to draw another Torado with this QMax. Just kidding. Okay. Okay, so interesting.
Nice, nice hit. You will take this.
Team TP to steal 1. Ooh,
there. It's not
discards
bad. TMTP
Resurgence.
for one.
Mm-hmm. And has the other Kymore. Oof.
Okay,
Wow. Nice.
that's brutal. Um, man. Well, you have to forge the red key, obviously.
Naturally.
Definitely.
Um, uh, yeah. I mean, I guess we have to go dis here. This is going to be a tough call for you.
Yeah. All right, so dis it is. Archives, no. Hmm. Wowzers. Still have an exhume coming from him, and he's about to shuffle.
This has been one of the worst draws I've seen with Macrobell in a while.
Has been it's been a funky draw for it for sure. So this is tricky. I was super tempted to play Mark of Dis first if I had it in my hand. Let's take a subtle chain and a wild wormhole.
Mm.
Yep. This one, and we'll take him off check here. Yeah, I'm not sure about that
I would
turn.
have I would have probably taken the TMTP.
That's fair. That's fair. because he's gonna flip the deck here. So there's definitely a case to be made for giving ourselves some room to burst on follow-up turns. Yeah.
It's going to be a rough binding irons right there, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it will. Interesting. Okay. I don't hate that.
All right. So he did flip the deck.
Mm-hmm.
He's got an Exhume and he's got an Invidious left, at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, maybe not an Exhume anymore.
Yeah, I played the
Um,
Zoom last turn.
you did, yeah. Um, let's go Dis.
I'm gonna look slightly less stupid for holding this Mark of Dis, which I like.
No, I like the hold of it. Um, I didn't like telegraphing to ST Russell that you had it,
Yeah.
Mm,
but I
that's
liked holding it.
that's right. Didn't change any of the plays.
Yep.
Oh.
So I'm actually gonna fight here, and this is interesting. I feel like I think I'm just gonna fight here, eat the purge, and leverage that for some efficiency. Okay. Not the best, but could have been worse.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Hmm.
Okay, and we take him off check. So that's
Yeah, I don't
cool.
hate that at all.
Oof, interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
So the real question now is whether he plays the Invidious or not. Not the Invidious, the Gizmo. But
Oh, he
I
has to
see a
go Dis now.
Disturin. Oof. Oof. Okay.
All right. This is a pickle.
Indeed. Huh.
Um, hmm. Let's go Logos.
Okay, going Logos. Taking archives. Yes, indeed. Let's do this thing. Okay. That's cool. I don't want Torado. Well, it doesn't matter a ton, but I don't want Torado on a flank. So I'm going to run these out. Put the Q mix there. Okay. Okay. Interesting.
Hmm.
Tell you what, man, these Lethalogica draws and like the lack of Lethalogicas in general has been really brutal.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's like a very light board for Macrobell at this point in
It
the
is,
game.
yeah. Especially against a deck that doesn't have any board wipes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
You could steal the Snoret. That's a cool idea.
See. Go. This year. Fight. Get that. Going to.
Fastering touch.
That.
Okay.
We're going to. Let's see. Reap. Take. Take this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Put him on right. One. Two. This and this.
Oof. Brutal. And another Lord Invidious. Nice.
And then we'll play this guy. Ooh, maybe I should have played him in between for an eye.
Hmm.
This guy on the left. I think we're just going to. All right.
Well, um, this deal's getting worse all the time.
Grim. Hmm.
Uh, yeah, I think we have to go untamed, but it's going to end poorly next turn.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, shots fired from Murph. Okay. Yep. Let's turn off these shenanigans. Okay, and win the mutant war for the moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
I felt like that was all we could do there, really, was to make him forge for 8 and possibly let him steal Pismire here. But
Mm-hmm.
what you going to do? I mean, that was a really rough spot for Macro Bell this game, I felt. I liked the keep at the beginning with, getting the Torado, but none of your QMEX or Torado draws really amounted to anything.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty tough. Let's go Dis here.
Yeah, I thought my draws were exceptionally good this game, just to be fair. Like I start off really like I think I drew most of my logos in the first half of my deck, which was really, really lucky for me.
Yeah.
Ooh, price with the pip. All right.
Okay. All right, let's go. Let's go.
Take that one too.
Are you monopolizing the Infernus?
What a
It's
jerk.
mine. Oh, mine.
So can we call that creature a Dismire instead of a Pismire?
Seriously.
It's a sleeper agent.
What do you got in deck there? Wonderful. A Lethalogica, just what we wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just go for some fun and go with Logos.
I like it. Okay, so let's maybe that Lithologic will be the last card in the deck. That'd be cool.
That would be really cool, but nope, too much to ask for.
Kicked in the teeth.
Oh,
All right, so I guess we play this
No,
one now.
no fun can be had.
All right, let's go, creatures. You should not have played that first. All right, gonna pass a check. Archive that guy. And that's it.
oh, good game.
Good game.
Thank you for
All
the
right,
game.
good game. Good game.
That was
Well,
not Macro Bell's finest moment.
I mean, it's customary to go easy on the new guy.
Yeah,
You know.
that's what I felt. You guys are making me make me feel welcome, on the
Mm-hmm.
stream. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
You guys.
I think that might be the first or maybe second time I've seen Seamstress. It looks really solid.
Yeah, it doesn't look like a whole lot. The creature control feels yeah, kind of lacking, but the Kymores and the Lord Invidious is like really hold their weight in this matchup. I think that oftentimes I find that if I can get Lord in the middle, then it just acts as its own form of board control because my opponent has to either
Absolutely.
discard creatures or play around the Invidious, which is just extra value for me. So
Definitely
it's
made
really
me want to hold on to. Or I called Logos one turn almost specifically just to play the Kurzap, just to get rid of it. So
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. It's a very, very punishing creature for sure. Yeah, and yeah,
Mm-hmm.
just absurd, hard to deal with. Elusive and 5 power, just has his cake and eats it too. It's incredible, great, really great creature.
The elusive on Lord Invidious is just super unnecessary. It's like an
so
elusive. Like, come on.
so rude. I know.
He is
Yeah,
very rude. It's the salt on the wound for sure. It's,
they're.
and the
Macro
five
Bell,
and the 5 power. It's just nuts.
yeah,
It's
like Macro Bell doesn't have enough 5 power creatures. I think there's one 5 power creature plus there's the Picaroon. are the only
Mhm.
things that could have feasibly fought it off the board. But yeah, it's that's definitely rough to have elusive and a 5 power.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And the often with the exhumes, you can even just recur him back into the center line just to sort of chip away at the answers for him as well. So
Having two in general like really increases your chances of centering them.
yep, definitely. And opening with him as well. It's one of the best first string plays
Oh,
in this deck.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and then you have, I think, did I count like 6 or 7 disc creatures in that deck?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And
or
then
8 maybe. That's a
some
lot.
there's a lot of disc creatures with E on the fringes, which is really cool. Later in the game, I can often purge most of my discs out of the deck, and then I'm just playing shadows and logos in the latter half of the game, which can be extra amber control, help close out games, which I really like about it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. Didn't get to see the Gizmo that game. I was disappointed.
Yeah, I had it in my hand and I didn't get to use it.
Definitely should have played it. We could have used a board wipe on this side.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
have welcomed a Gizmo earlier on in the
It,
match there.
it's been a lot of lessons learned with this deck at playing the Gizmo at the right time and just not playing it as well. So often, if I have if I have a great board set up like this, my opponent can use the Gizmo against me and steal back a lot of tempo. So it's yeah, it's very skill testing card in this deck for sure.
Yeah, Macrobell is like in a similar place where it needs to be extremely careful with its creature control.
Mhm.
Like I was hoping we get into a situation, JT, that game where, you were tempted to either just like pitch the Kurzap or, one thing I really love to do with it is use the causal loop on it and just keep it
Hmm.
away. Because I never like it always feels dirty to use a causal loop on an off-house card because then you're eventually going to
Mhm.
be taking the causal loop in something else later. So I really love using the causal loop on either standardized or the Kurzap in that deck. I've had cases early on where I, didn't really like think that far ahead with it, and then if you don't save your Kurzap for the right time, you're in big trouble pretty fast.
Yeah. Even even then, and then probably from hearing you talk about this deck or talking about this deck, I was definitely valuing the Kurzap really highly, and even the
Mhm.
standardized testing. I think when we played it was the absolute right time to play it, but it's almost like you feel like you don't want to give it up. you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
it often hits your own QMAX, which is often okay. Like I said, your highest power creature is the Dino Beast, which is a 5, or the Pikaroon, which can get higher than that. Um, I've had weird situations where the Dino Beast was the largest creature on the board, and it has an amber on it because you almost always exalt it in this deck.
Hmm.
And so it can be kind of annoying at that point if they're at like 5 and you can't play your standardized because you're going to give them a key because you can't take them off check with Logos. So it gets in some awkward situations for it too, but finding the right value with the standardized and the Kurzap is like really crucial to the deck.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, how important are like the resurgence for amber control in this deck? Do you find that you use them to pull the Pismire back for some extra amber control, or
Yeah,
you?
definitely the Pismire, often the Tirados.
Mm,
Like when this deck gets going, it gets the creature spam going. It forces the opponent to like spend a wipe on killing the Tirados, and then the very next turn you bust out a Resurgence and you get both of them back or something like that, and they're
mm,
immediately a threat with Fandangle out on the board. And now they're like, okay, well now they have like 3 mutants and Fandangle, and they're gonna drop a couple of ready Tirados, and it can really put pressure on that way if they can't handle these witches every single turn. Um, Interestingly enough, I like to use the resurgence on the Ghost Hawks as well. So like the battle
mm,
line is actually really hard in this one because you did a great job with it that game, JT. Like keeping your mutants together and keeping your non-untamed mutants together. Because the Ghost Hawk can definitely get like some major reaps in. If you have two Tirados out, you put the Ghost Hawk right between the Tirados, and then you reap and you draw like 4 or 6 with those. And then next turn, if you have a resurgence, you fight with the Ghost Hawk just to kill it, resurgence it back, and then put it between those same two Tirados to draw again. So, um, got some pretty cool plays like that stuff.
yeah, the double ghost shock. I was waiting to see the shenanigans you guys were up to with them. It didn't get to come out in this game, but I can absolutely see how it can be pretty insane once you get the creature spam going, like you said, especially
Yeah.
with the false blessing, being able to recur
Yeah,
that perhaps even multiple times if you can get your deck thin enough.
Yeah.
pretty insane.
I've had many games with deck in hand. I've rule of sixed Infernus a few times. Um, just from like you draw so much with like the Dominator Bauble and the Seratos out and the Essence Scale, and then the Fandango comes in. You're like Infernuses are ready, so like your deck's empty. You drop some Infernuses ready. You fight off something, and they go back out, and then you reap with the Snoret, and you draw three of them back again. Stuff like that. It gets pretty silly if it gets going, and
Mhm.
didn't give us a chance this game.
What a jerk. He comes on, talks about flesh and blood, wins the game. Like, it's the last time. Not happening again.
Not until next week when we let
Yeah,
JD
yeah,
do
not
all that
until
stuff.
next week. Yeah. At least 1 week you
Yeah,
have to stay off. Yeah.
that's right.
Vanished for 1 week,
Banished for
exile.
a week. Yeah, indeed.
But yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to play this deck on stream. This was a lot very fun match. Thank you both for the game.
Yeah, thank you.
It was yeah, I love these hand and brain games. Very interesting to hear your guys' dynamic when playing out turns.
Well, super
I
cool too.
love
I
the
think.
four light hand brain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel
I was
like
just gonna say like playing it on stream is like nice because it gives you a chance to like kind of talk about like what you would have done differently, and it's a really good learning experience, I think, to do it
Hmm.
on stream.
and
Yeah,
so interesting too,
definitely.
just like how often folks would call different houses. It's not even like, oh, I would have put that on the left flank instead of the right flank. Like that happens all the time too. But it's like I would have called a completely different house. Like that happens more often than you would expect. And I mean, I think there are some games that we've played with Not Tonight, STRS and myself, where it's like we would have each called like a different house. It's like it's like wow, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure from your perspective, Quitra, just seeing like Justin pilot the deck, it must be also kind of interesting perspective to watch someone else play your deck through that lens, you know? Like, for
It's
me,
so much fun. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I'm always excited to be the brain in this because I love watching other people play my decks. I think it's really fun.
Yeah, I love having that perspective because I feel like, especially with certain decks, I get locked into a certain strategy or certain lines, but just seeing someone else tinker and, explore other avenues with the deck can be really mind-opening, you know?
Sure. Yeah. People should do this more often. Like
Hmm. Definitely.
get with your friends and do a hand and brain. It's a really, really good experience. Good way to learn.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. Cool. Well, been fun. Good times in the lab. Uh,
So, ST Russell, your final exam is, do you have a good sign off for us? Because this is number 9 now, and we still got nothing.
A good sign off. Uh, no. Maybe that's a good.
yeah, we'll cut it right there. I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was just really fun to do this with both of you. Thank you for having me on. I think I've been really looking forward to getting back into playing more competitive Keyforge, been participating in more leagues now, and just getting back into it. So this was just a great opportunity. So thank you to both of you to having that, to being able to enjoy this with you both. And I'm looking forward to doing this more often as well. I think,
You're welcome anytime.
yeah, absolutely. I'm going to be hopefully regular on the bottom of the beaker.
Oh, you're at the bottom of the
All
beaker, all
right.
right. All right. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight. We're signing off here. Enjoy the rest of your evening, your morning, your day, what have you, and we will see you around the lab.
See you guys.
Yep.